Hello, my name is Dr. Naftali Williams. I am a USC Provost Postdoctoral Scholar at the Annenberg School and a fellow for the Yale Schwarzman Center.
Hi, my name is Zoe Corwin. I'm research professor at the Puglia Center for Higher Education at USC.
So what really drew our interest in the first study was understanding that there had been a lack of real scholarship that focused on the lives of skateboarders and how they thought about both their practice of skateboarding, how the community felt. The study itself was the first of its kind to bring in so many different skaters and so many different perspectives.
With the first study that we did, funded by the Tony Hawk Foundation, where we were looking at skateboarders across the country, we found that young people were really getting a lot out of skateboarding.
We saw that they built community. We saw that there was intergenerational learning. We saw that skaters from every background were participating in skateboarding culture.
We had some really interesting findings related to that study, but one of the most compelling had to do with why young people skateboard, and that is to have fun and relieve stress, which might not seem like a really revolutionary finding, but given the pretty dire rates of suicide ideation, suicide, obesity, some of the mental health challenges that young people face in the United States, actually having fun becomes a pretty significant activity. And with the second study, we wanted to go deeper and learn more about how skateboarding helps young people relieve stress and have fun.
Now with the first study, the thing that was really meaningful for me was understanding that skaters of color, particularly black skaters, felt safer when they were carrying their boards. And that might seem strange, but what we saw was that the reason they felt safer is that they felt that they were judged less harshly by non-skaters and people who are non-people of color. Now, that could be that maybe they're normally going through a neighborhood and something as simple as them not being viewed as a threat. And so for me, that was the most impactful part of the first study.
The Mattering in the Margins study developed out of a real deep desire to learn more about the well-being of young people. And so we wanted to do a deep dive and see what was it about skateboarding that helped lift people's spirits. So the Mattering in the Margins study was really doing a deep dive into the nexus between skateboarding, mental health and well-being, and community.
As researchers, it became really important for us to understand what was the glue, what was the thing that gave them some sort of social cohesion and feel like they actually should spend time with each other as opposed to all the other things that pull people apart.
We brought together professors from School of Education, Social Work, Annenberg, which is our communication school, drama, and we recruited 20 skaters between the ages of 18 and 30. We equipped them with cameras, and together we collaborated on what was called a participatory action research project. So they became co-researchers with us. They designed the study, they figured out the questions that we would be asking. They went out into the field or the streets and filmed content every week. And then we came together to talk about our findings and discuss them together and really figure out what we were learning from each other.
What was important to us using PAR was that we could have a reciprocal relationship with our skaters. And it became something where we made sure we were starting what they wanted to talk about, the message that they wanted to send to the world so that people could understand them better, rather than it just being sort of a top-down approach where we as researchers say, we need to study this, this is what we need to know. It was allowing the participants to say, this is what we would like you to know, this is what we think is important in our lives.
Yeah, so each week we would meet together on Zoom and break into small groups and show different clips that the skaters had collected and produced, and really just talk about how the clips made us feel, how the skaters would kind of try and pull out themes that they were interested in exploring further, and then we would come to consensus and pick a new theme to go out and film. Just really short clips. It was really powerful. The powerful part was coming together in this communal space. Most of us hadn't met each other, and we had like this really trusting, kind of deep listening space where people, I think, felt heard. So the themes that the skaters explored were really driven by what they were interested in, and some of that was driven by like how they think society views them. Like one of the themes was perception, so how they felt like they were perceived by others, and then we would come together and discuss that.
What was wonderful was that we saw that those once-a-week meetings had meaning not only for them to discuss their lives, but for us as researchers, which was something that we really didn't expect. What we really wanted to do was help amplify the voices of all these young people. There are many ways that skaters are misunderstood or maligned, right? To be marginalized because it isn't football or it isn't these major sports, and so sometimes that causes it to be looked at in a different way. Within the study, giving young people the opportunity to speak to academics, legislators, community leaders about the impact of skateboarding in their lives and how it impacted their mental health, their physical health, their sense of community and well-being. That was the best part of this study, was just to be able to be a vehicle for those messages so that you can understand more about skateboarding and know why skaters are valuable to your community and anything that you're trying to do.
I think that the skaters were interested in changing the narrative around skateboarding. I think that many of them wanted to push the skate community to be more inclusive and to think differently about how they're inviting all skaters into the community.
Having 20 different participants from so many different backgrounds also allowed those skaters to speak to each other, as opposed to just speaking to us as researchers. With everyone in dialogue and everyone bringing in their experience to that Zoom space once a week, we got to have so many different positionalities actually be able to speak to each other. So for us, understanding and identifying how they were able to still be 6 feet apart, but still be active, as important as it is to be active, and making sure that they could still be together regardless of the situation, well, that bit of ingenuity we thought was fantastic. So that was just one thing that we found.
So the interesting thing about skateboarding, it actually relates to some bigger trends in athletic research, which is that a lot of young people, like around the age of 13, drop out of team sports because they're just not fun anymore. And skateboarding really resonates with young adolescents and teenagers. Also, the fact that skateboarding is a pretty easy access sport and activity, so people from low-income communities, if they can find a board and a good pair of shoes, can have access to skateboarding. As a professor, there are things that I've learned from skateboarders that's the kind of student that I want in my classroom, because they're creative thinkers, they collaborate really beautifully. Like if you ever watch a skateboarder filming another skater, it's magic. And then, the cross-cultural communication, the ease of just connecting with different people in a common space. Those are different skills that, as a professor, I'd love to have those skills in my classroom, but also, in terms of industry, I think that there's the skate mindset is a pretty cool mindset to have as part of your team.
So what's next? What we want to do next is expand the size and scope of the study. While we did something targeted, which was the LA study, to really understand the lives of LA, And then we've done sort of a macro level to look at skaters' lives in general. We want to get data from all of the regions in the United States, and we want to be able to pinpoint what are the obstacles and opportunities that young skaters face everywhere throughout the country, so that they can talk to their legislators, their community leaders, and their schools, so that they get a chance to really understand what life is like for the young people directly in their community.